Hi again. We're going to look today at adding together fractions with different denominators when there's a lot more going on the bottom. So like we said last time, you can only add together fractions where the denominators match. So we're going to have to make that happen, and this is where our knowledge of expanding brackets from earlier is going to come in handy, as well as factorizing. So if I need to make these bottom things match, I'm just going to multiply them together. So what I'm going to do is whatever you multiply the bottom with, you also have to multiply the top with. So in this case, I'm going to multiply the bottom by x plus 2. So that means I have to do the same thing for the top. Now make sure you're using brackets, otherwise it will not make sense. So then I have x plus 1, x plus 2, plus same thing on the other side, but this time I'm multiplying everything by x plus 1. So then on the bottom I have x plus 2, x plus 1. So now that my denominators match, that's when I'm allowed to put these two things together. So firstly, I'm going to expand my brackets. So I have 2x plus 4 plus 3x plus 3, right? I'm just expanding my brackets here. And then all of that just goes over this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to collect my like terms. So I'm going to say I have 5x plus 7 over x plus 1, x plus 2. Now the book is leaving the answer like that, but you can also expand these brackets, so I don't really mind what version you leave it with. So remember the FOIL thing, so I'm going to do x squared plus 2x plus x plus 2, and then I have 5x plus 7 all over x squared plus 3x plus 2. Now, if there were things in common when we got to this stage, so this is unfactorizable, right? There's nothing I can do here to pull out any common factors. We'll have a look at later about how you can do some extra cancelling, but for here, I've just got my most simple version. You can take this version or this version, but if you're going to expand, you can't stop there, and you definitely can't stop there. All right, so either one of those would be correct according to the textbook, but I think I prefer this bottom one here, just because we don't like having brackets when we're done at the end. All right, so this is exactly the same, but this time we've got to be really careful with our signs because we've got some negatives going on. So same, I'm going to multiply this one by that and this one by that. So then I have 5 p minus 5 over p plus 3, p minus 5. And then same thing here, I'm going to have 3, and then I'm multiplying by this time, p plus 3, and then p minus 5, p plus 3. All right, so I'm going to expand my brackets, so I get 5p minus 25, and then here I get minus, don't forget this sign, 3p minus 9, all over this together. So p plus 3, p minus 5. All right, I'm going to collect my like terms, and I'm going to expand these brackets. So 5p minus 3p is just 2p, and then 25 minus 9 is negative 34, and then if I FOIL this, I get p squared minus 5p plus 3p minus 15. All right, now I'm going to simplify this. So I get 2p minus 34 all over p squared minus 2p minus 15. Now, this could be simplified by taking out a 2, but that's not actually going to help us cancel any further, so I don't think there's really any point. If you wanted to leave the bottom with brackets like this, I would ask you to be consistent and do top and bottom. So what you could do is, let's have a look at this step. So let's go sort of half of this and half of this. And you could say 2p minus 17 over p plus 3, p minus 5. You could do something like that. Therefore, everything's in brackets. But frankly, I prefer this version here because brackets are a bit messy. All right, so what happens now when we've got a lot more going on? So we have squared terms on top and bottom. So this is where your use of factorizing is going to come in handy. So before we had things that were already factorized, or we created factors on the bottom with brackets, now we actually need to do that for ourselves. So what I'm going to do is, this has only got 2 terms, so that's a bit easier. I'm just going to pull out what they have in common. So they have an x in common, so I'm left with x minus 2. Now on the bottom, there's nothing in common, so I can't pull anything out, but there are 3 terms, and this is a quadratic. So remember, we're going to do the opposite of our foiling thing. I taught you the shortcut before, where we're looking for two numbers that add to the middle and multiply to the last. Those are the two numbers we're looking for. So what two numbers add to positive? So you add to positive 1 and multiply to negative 6. Well, I'll give you a second to think about it. Hopefully you can tell that that's plus 3 and minus 2. So that's what belong in my brackets. Whoops. Okay, so I've got plus 3 and minus 2. Now you'll see, so when you're adding and subtracting, you can't just start cancelling out x squared and x squared. You're not allowed to do things like that. That's a common mistake. But you are allowed to start cancelling things when you're only left with multiplication. So in this step, these two things are multiplying and these two things are multiplying. So because we only have multiplication going on, we're allowed to do some cancelling, right? It's like just dividing. So this, anything divided by itself is 1, so that's why they disappear. So then I'm just left with x over x plus 3. Now, again, you cannot do this extra step and cross out these x's because we've got addition going on now. So you're no longer allowed to cross out things that match because you can only do that when there's only multiplication going on. All right, so that's a nice simpler answer than this. Okay, let's try the same thing here. What have we got in common in the top? Again, x is the thing that we have in common. And what have we got in, well, we've got nothing in common here. So I'm going to look for two numbers that add to the middle and multiply to the last, like our rule says. So what two numbers? We're going to add to negative 2 and multiply to negative 15. I'll give you a second to think about that. All right, hopefully you've come up with the answers negative 5 and positive 3. So that's going to add to negative 2 and multiply to negative 15. So that's what I'm going to write here. Okay, now we've got some problems because those things don't match. All right, well, these things should cancel out. Okay, maybe I've written the question down incorrectly. That is definitely possible. I copied this question from somewhere else and I reckon I've probably just miscopied it. So we're going to make this a plus sign because that will reverse these signs and that will make this work. Okay, so we're going to make that plus and that negative. All right, so if these two brackets match, so before I couldn't cancel these because the signs were different, they didn't match. So that means this must have been a 2 because clearly I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so these two things are going to cancel out and so we're left with x over x plus 5. Again, you're not allowed to do extra cancelling because we've got addition going on here. So this is a bit harder, I mean, it ends up looking simpler, but you've got to do your factorising first. Once your brackets match, then you can cross stuff out. All right, good luck. Let me know if you need some help.